I'm excited to have you in for Sip It, Nashville Conversations. This is a program we put on every month for the community and for our members to kind of just tell stories about the creatives in our city. We partner with the Tennessean to put on this event, and this is David right here from the Tennessean, so make sure to say hi to him. We also partner with Jump Goat Media, which is this crew with the cameras walking around. They tape clips of this conversation and put it on our YouTube page, so make sure to check that out as well. And then one last shout out to Bennett in the back with all the cool Nashville goods set up out there. He sells those goods every month. He's also in an Airstream. You'll probably see him at festivals and that kind of thing. But it's called Born in the Nash, so make sure to check out his goods back there. But really glad to have you here. Once again, let me know if you have any questions, and I'm going to hand it over to Lily. And a little background about our relationship with Lily. She was an alumni of our Periscope program, which is kind of the artists program with the Arts Business Council at Metro. So she went through that, and then we partnered with her to bring in the subjects from her book that Bennett also sells in the back to come in and have this live conversation. So really excited to have Lily and Troy here this morning, and I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
So much. Everyone can hear me? Okay, cool. So I always like to give a little bit of background behind how I choose the subjects that I interview, because it truly is through word of mouth. And Troy and I met through word of mouth. It was funny. I was actually working 3 summers ago as a personal assistant for a pretty rich couple downtown. And I remember one day I called up the woman and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for this really well-known director." And she said, "Well, I didn't know him, but I think you really get along with my friend Troy Duff as a graffiti artist." I was like, "Okay, that's completely not even in the same vein, but I'll go for it." And so she passed along his number, and it was funny because for me, having grown up in Chicago, and having tons of friends who did graffiti, and that being sort of a part of the street culture there, I've always been fascinated by it. So I was most intrigued to meet someone who has made a living as a graffiti artist their entire life, basically. So I guess my first question is, how did you first learn what graffiti was, and how did you learn the craft?
Hello to all. Thank you guys for having me. And so I was first introduced to graffiti by a friend of mine in high school. We were hanging out. We were both into BMX and skateboarding and lowrider trucks at the time. And he showed me a graffiti book one day, and we both had artistic background, and I identified with it very well. We're both visual people, and I was fascinated by it. Haven't tried it, just looking at pictures of it, and was like, wow, this is super cool, but there was nothing like that around here. This was, he had shared some time in Los Angeles, and most of the pictures and things that he had was LA graffiti. And so right off the bat, I was like, dude, this is awesome. I want to get into this. And so the two of us.
What was it about it that it really kind of intrigued you?
I think just the color schemes, the graphics, it wasn't so much the messages in the graffiti at the time. I just think I identified with the characters, the loose styles, the clean styles, the different types of graffiti, and the colors, they were just speaking to me, and so to me, the only thing I could compare that to was airbrushing kind of stuff, but it was completely different from that. And so to see it though around cities, on walls and things like that, and being born and raised in Nashville, I was like, wow, we don't have any of this here. So that's kind of when it jumped off, and I think that was probably mid to late 80s.
So were you, I know the guys I went to high school with, they were running around at 3 in the morning, with spray paint cans, looking over their shoulders for the cops. Was that kind of your deal?
That is, most graffiti. Thanks for putting me on the spot, you know what I'm saying?
They can't arrest you 25 years later, just
looking over my shoulder. Yeah, that's pretty much how most graffiti artists get started. Everybody starts out with a tag, you come up with a name, and you go out and you just tag your name everywhere.
What was your first name?
My first name was Basic.
Basics?
Basic.
Okay.
B-A-S-I-C. And it's pretty basic, just trying to figure it out. I was just starting. And, you know, we would go around. My buddy lived in Green Hills, and I was born and raised in 12 South, and, you know, no graffiti around these neighborhoods. And we would go around and we would just tag our name, and then, you know, from a tag, you try to go to what we call like throw-ups, and then you go to pieces. But
What is a throw-up and what is a piece for those of us who don't know that much about graffiti?
Graffiti 101. Okay, so you guys,
He's gonna school y'all today.
you guys all know what a tag is. A throw-up is basically like stylized bubble letters. You guys all used to doodle in class and write your name in bubble letters. That's pretty much what a throw-up is. We call it a throw-up because you just run up to the wall, and it's something that you can do very fast, maybe 2 colors. So you just outline the letters and fill them in real fast, and you're gone. So
There
that's.
must be like a huge adrenaline rush too when you're doing that, right?
It is. I remember just even my first tag, feeling like all these eyes were watching me. It's like, oh my gosh, you know. But it gets addictive, you know. And I think the big thing about graffiti is, as taggers, graffiti artists, piecers, whatever, they really get into seeing their name and how much they can put it up. So if you're from cities like New York, it was more about seeing your name around the city, around the trains. You forget where you put it. So, you know, you could ride the train to this part of the city and be like, oh man, I forgot I even threw that tag up, you know. And it's like, wow, okay, I'm in this borough, I'm in this borough, I'm in this borough. And it gets to a point to where you're all city, you know, to where anywhere you go, you see your name up. So
I'm thinking, you know, I was always an art major in school, and, you know, and they teach you how to paint and, you know, do still lifes, and, you know, a model would come in, but they don't teach you how to do graffiti in school. So did you have any sort of like mentors or people that like showed you the ropes? How'd you learn how to actually get good at it?
I don't. So, you know, looking at the only book that my buddy introduced me to was called Subway Art, and there was one other one out called Spray Can Art at the time. And I remember just looking over this book over and over and over again and identifying with who these graffiti artists were. Some were from Germany, some were from Amsterdam, some were from New York, Los Angeles, and just looking at their different styles and just trying to be able to identify, okay, this guy has a wild style kind of thing going on over here. This guy's very loose and abstract and sketchy. This particular guy only does characters, but it was mainly just starting to sketch and trying to identify with what kind of graffiti artist I wanted to be. I didn't really have any mentors. There was nobody painting in Nashville at the time, so we pretty much started the scene here around 87, 88. There was probably just a spoonful of us, and you know, we try to start our own crews, and it's like just a few of us.
Competing
It's like,
against each
yeah,
other.
meet you in the alley after school, you know. It's like, okay, we'd have to purposely create drama to like diss someone's piece, you know, so somebody could like do something else, because I think it was maybe like 5 or 6 of us, and you know, coming from the commercial art class or whatever, we all sit together in class and work on things. But you know, it was cool because it was brand new to us, and there was nothing else out there. So we kind of, you know, sometimes go out together on the weekends and just go around and do things. And, you know, no one was really good at piecing at the time. Maybe like 2 guys that
Piecing
were
being like a huge mural piece,
yeah.
right?
And
Okay.
so a piece is short for masterpiece. It's when somebody does a full actual, I don't want to say a production, but your piece actually has fill-ins and outlines and highlights and graphics and everything on the inside, not just a tag or just a throw-up. So that's where a piece comes from. So a lot of the times graffiti artists are offended when you say, oh, he's a tagger. So that just means he goes around and he just tags things. So he's like, no, I'm not a tagger. That's like degrading to a graffiti artist. So
it's like the difference between fine art and like being a craft person.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting.
So,
It's like
you
a little
know,
bit of a hierarchy there.
yeah, it is. It's a hierarchy thing, and it took a little time. You know, we all start off with the tags, and you go to the throwies, and then you start trying to do pieces, and you realize like, oh man, this is nothing compared to the pieces in the books. But you're learning. You know, it's a thing that it's trial and error. The more you do it, the better off you'll be.
So when was the first time you felt like you
Excuse
did
me.
something really cool or like you were really proud of? And did you show your parents?
I did.
Did
So
your parents know that you were doing this?
my mom, yeah, my parents did. So my father's blind and from an accident when he was 15 years old. And so I've always been a very visual person. I was reading Braille at like 3rd grade, you know, and I identified with graffiti, you know, right off the bat. And my mom, she liked it, but she didn't like me doing it. Illegally, of course. She used to say, don't do this in our neighborhood, you know, but it's no better if you go to someone else's neighborhood. so she's always busting my chops about that. And, you know, it was tough. If you're walking the streets in Nashville back then at, you know, 2 in the morning, you stick out like a sore thumb. It's not like New York or LA, San Fran, Philly, where there's just tons of people still out in the streets doing whatever. And, you know, she would get on my case about it, but she never told me I couldn't do it. If I got caught, you know, I'm not coming to get you if you get caught for graffiti. And so, you know, I did have that scare, but it didn't stop me. And, yeah, I just did my thing. You know, I didn't get caught. I never got caught. And it wasn't until I really moved to Los Angeles in '91 is where my graffiti went to the next level.
And I'm curious about that, you know, monetizing graffiti. I mean, because I know that you know, painted on everything from, you know, canvases to, you know, I think the last time we hung out, you were telling me you just painted a pair of high-heeled pumps. I mean, you know, you'll paint on any and everything. And so, how did you first begin actually monetizing your craft?
Well, I guess that was more in my LA days because I got the foundation here and then I moved out there and realized like, wow, it's to a much bigger level. I get to everywhere, really cool stuff, billboards, advertising graffiti and things. And I thought, this is great. And I started a clothing line in 2003 and it was based around graffiti or street art on clothes. But I didn't want, and I was doing it with an airbrush, but I didn't want to say the word airbrush because when you say airbrush, people think of, you know, something you get in the mall or Panama City Beach with like Todd Loves Jane and a beach scene, you know. So I was basically, you know, treating my pieces on clothes just like I was doing them on the walls, really layering the colors. It took a lot of time, and that's when I began to see the difference between what I was doing on the walls was really connecting here and how people responded to it. And so I started the clothing line, and right off the bat, a lot of the trendy boutiques around Hollywood and Beverly Hills are like, this is awesome, you know.
It was
You got to
some
bring
pretty big boutiques too, right?
Yeah, like Lisa Klein and Kitson, and then I had this Japanese import business that would send me things from Japan. And
Which Troy actually showed me something kind of funny one time. He was showing me his press clips, and there was one from a Japanese magazine that I had actually bought when I was in Japan. And wasn't there like a little feature story about you?
Yeah, they had
you're like a
this
celebrity over in Tokyo.
it was they do this thing called the hit item, and it's all the hot things that are, you know, the trends in Japan. And so the company I was painting for was called ANAP, and ANAP, some of the denim shorts and tank tops and things that I was doing was I want to say number 19, I think, on the hit item list. I think they go up to 50 or something. And so it started off with like maybe 20 shirts or something that they would bring me and say, oh, you know what? Whatever you think is great, just put it on the shirt. You know, any kind of little catchy sayings like baby girl or sugar or, you know, any sayings. I was like,
baby girl
I mean, I swear, it's like, anything you think is cool, put on this shirt and sell it. I was like, anything? They were like, yeah. So I just started putting all these little sayings on these shirts, and they would ship it back to Japan and triple the price, and they would sell out, and then they'd bring me more. So it got to a point to where they were dropping off like boxes of like shirts and denim skirts and jackets and Ugg boots and all kinds of things, and I was painting everything. I mean, my life was I would go and audition for television and film stuff, and then I would come back to my studio and just paint all night for days and days and days. And, you know, it was great because each one was hand painted. So, you know, I wasn't charging them mass production price. I was charging them like an original piece of art for each one. So it was, you know, I made great money at that, and it was really cool. And to be published in a magazine, I think it was called Woofin', and they had another one. I can't remember that magazine. It's probably called Baby Girl or something.
But there was a major learning curve, because I know when you first told me your story, when I had written about you a couple years ago for Nashville Arts, you know, you said that was kind of like your point of like burning out, right? I mean,
Yeah, it got to a point to where, you know, when I first started it, I was really just hustling my product. I was going around up and down Melrose and Hollywood Boulevard to all these boutiques, and I basically had my stuff in a bag. I painted up some samples and was like, hey, my name's Troy, and this is what I do. Are you guys interested in putting this in your boutique? And so I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. Do you have any on this boutique anywhere else on the street? And I say, yeah. And they're like, well, we don't want it then. So it become like this thing, like if this boutique had it, then this boutique didn't want it. And it got to a point to where the Japanese people would bring me so much stuff that I lost my edge of getting out there and trying to hustle it and find different places to put it. But I did have this one client that would just keep me busy, and I made good money off of it. And it, you know, I think I ran that course for probably 4 or 5 years, and then they got to a point to where they wanted it for mass production price. They said, you know, we've been doing this for 5 years, and we love your product, and it sells great, but we've been paying you, you know, for original art for each piece for 5 years. Now we want mass production price. And well, I can't give you mass production price because I'm still doing it each piece by hand. So it was kind of a burnout thing, but also in a business sense, they couldn't do that anymore. So, you know, then you have to go back to getting out there and going to different places and finding boutiques that would carry it and go to the next level.
and there's something interesting. I didn't realize this until I think the last time Troy and I talked. I guess, and you kind of explained it as like selling out in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of graffiti artists will consider you a sellout if you paint on anything other than a wall, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you painting on canvases and painting on items of clothing and stuff is actually kind of controversial in a sense.
Yeah, you know, so most graffiti artists just want to keep it very street. They want to keep it edgy. They love the thrill of trying to get away with illegally painting. And so when I first moved to California, I kind of lived this life. It was almost like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you know. My family out there was wealthy, and I was like the kid from Nashville that comes out there who's into graffiti and all kinds of stuff. And my aunt was a principal, and my uncle was like city council and the politics and stuff. And I was like, I just see it now. I get busted, and the Duff name is going to be ruined in California. So, you know, a lot of the times I couldn't do a lot of illegal graffiti in Oxnard, where I used to live. But the guy who introduced me to graffiti, when I moved to Los Angeles, he moved about 2 months before me, and he lived in the city. So he would come up and pick me up in Oxnard. It's like an hour north of Los Angeles, and we'd go down to the city, and we would just bomb and paint all the time. And I had gotten to a point to where I had started airbrushing, like surfboards, and for all my surfer buddies, and snowboards and things like that. And I was just kind of content with that for a while, because painting in Los Angeles is different. I mean, you got a lot of gang stuff going on, and I wasn't hip to that. So the first few times I was painting, you know, somebody comes up to you and they ask you where you're from. They're really asking, what gang are you from? To me, I was like, oh, I'm from Nashville, 12 South, you know.
Bel-Air, guys.
They're like, what?
I'm on TV.
Where are you from? Nashville. They didn't understand that. And I played off of it for longer than I probably should, you know. So I got tired of being sweated by people like, yeah, why are you painting here? And I didn't want to deal with that every time I wanted to go and paint. Sometimes we go down to Huntington Beach, where they let you paint on the walls along right there by the beach. They're just community walls that everybody could paint on. And, you know, I thought, okay, so this is a little out of the LA gritty city painting. I go down to Huntington Beach and thinking like, this is gonna be cool. I can go and surf for a little bit and come back and paint a piece. And even there, you know, me and my buddy were painting. These guys walked up and like, what are you doing? We're painting. Why are you going over my piece? And, you know, I didn't, but my buddy went over this piece, and he was like, oh, man, no, I didn't know that was yours, but we're just here trying to express. And, you know, the guys are like, that's not cool. He said, I'll tell you what, if your piece doesn't look better than mine, it's going to be on. And I thought, like, oh, my God, really? You know, so I just got tired of dealing with having to almost fight somebody every time you want to paint. So that kind of got me into just starting to do things on canvases, and I was very comfortable with that. But then the graffiti guys would be like, dude, you're selling out. You're not out there painting on walls and doing illegal graffiti. So that's pretty much what they were calling the selling out. And if you start doing gallery shows and things, you know, it's funny because back then, that wasn't really allowed. You were a sellout. But now graffiti being very popular and in the forefront, all these guys now that kind of were running the scene in LA are huge time graffiti artists, and they're doing these gallery shows, they're flying all over the world, and they're making a great living at it. But I was trying to fight the power. Just, no, I want to paint on whatever I want to paint on and not have to worry about cops or gang members or whatever, you know, at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you moved back to Nashville, I know you told me that you kind of almost hit the city at the perfect moment, kind of like I did when I moved here, you know. I mean, I remember I just kind of put my, you know, finger on the map and said, Nashville, oh wow, there's an article about it in the New York Times, let's go, let's move here. You know, it seems like the city is about to, you know, kind of blow up. And you came back for a different reason.
I
for your
did.
family around a similar time.
I did.
So what was kind of, how did you kind of sell yourself on your hometown?
Well, I came back at the end of '06, and this is after having success as an actor in Los Angeles and my clothing line doing well there. And I've tested the waters here a couple times. I would come back and I would go around to some of the boutiques here and just say, hey, it's kind of the same way I started in LA, going around and say, hey, this is what I do. You're interested in having any of this in your boutique? Excuse me. And some people would look at it and be like, wow, this is really cool. And the other ones are like, this is great, but I don't know if we can sell things like that here. I think it was a little just too before its time. Now would probably be better, yeah. So I did have something to fall back on. You know, I had learned a lot about how to pitch my product and learn what kind of place I wanted to put my product in, because first of all, graffiti is just not for everybody. You know, a lot of people still think that it's vandalism. They only see it that way. So a lot of times when I'm doing corporate events, I don't even say graffiti because it's very taboo still and they're turned off by it. So I'll say street art or urban art, and that's a little more accepted. But yeah, I came back here and I started doing some things with Melody. She had a clothing boutique called Bloke over in 12 South across from Burger Up. And at the time I was doing designs on blazers and shirts and vests and belts, and I was also doing the women's pumps and boots and handbags and things like that. And you know, people looked at it and they're like, wow, this is pretty cool and edgy, but wasn't really sure that it was for Nashville. And Melody had just relocated back from Los Angeles, and she ran
Melody being the woman that we met through.
Yeah, sorry. And she ran Lisa Klein men's boutique out there, and we connected and did some things there. So she kind of helped me jump it off here because she knew that it would move here. It was just going to take a little time. And so from starting with the clothes, I saw the reaction that people were getting from it. And then it got to be, then I started the Duff Clothing Kids and started putting little kids things in the boutiques here. And that was starting to take off. So between my canvas works, the clothes, the kids line, through all three of them, and then just doing just my regular graffiti stuff, it was interesting to see which one was getting the most hits and what people were really responding to. So I kind of just piggybacked off of each one of those for a few years, and then it just got to where graffiti was the top dog. You know, it's.
I'm curious about when you got into doing the corporate gigs, because I know one of the most interesting things Troy ever told me was, you know, him growing up in Nashville and, you know, being sort of progressive, graffiti being progressive at the time, even just 5-6 years ago. You said one of the kind of most mind-blowing moments you ever had of your career was when you were hired to paint inside of
The mall, Cool Springs Mall.
It was the Cool Springs Mall, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
so.
And then and you said you looked around and you were like, "Is this seriously happening?"
Yeah, this was nuts. A lady that works for a fragrance line, Cody, they promote all these different fragrances, and Calvin Klein had a new fragrance out called Shock, and it had a very graffiti-inspired logo. And so each city they were going to promote it, they were looking for an artist to kind of do some live art. So this lady found me online, and she says, I need you to do some live graffiti to promote this Calvin Klein fragrance. I said, okay. I said, where are we doing this? She said, in Cool Springs Mall. And I thought, like, outside the mall? She's like, no, right in the fragrance department.
You're like, I'm gonna poison everyone
like,
with the spray paint.
What? So I said, okay. I show up with my easel and my crate of spray paint. And, you know, so she's like, you just kind of do your thing. And I was like, okay. So I started rocking this piece in the middle of the fragrance department at Cool Springs Mall. And I thought, oh my gosh, never in a million years would I thought I would be in the middle of a shopping mall in Nashville doing live graffiti inside, you know. And I was like, okay, I'm an hour into it, and I would turn around and I was amazed by how many people were stopping just to watch me paint and would come over and ask questions and like, hey, this is great. Can you come paint my music room in my house or do my kid's bedroom or whatever? And so that was really only supposed to be a one-day thing. And it was such a great turnout. She's like, can you come back tomorrow for a couple of hours? And I was like, sure, you know. So from those 2 days, I did Calvin Klein. She called me back to do a Marc Jacobs or Roberto Cavalli. And I started traveling around to all these cities doing this live art to promote these products. And from that corporate thing, then a company called Destinations Nashville here in town, they do a lot of convention events. And so another one of my eye-opening events was a couple years ago, I was in the Opryland Hotel, another place that I would never think would let you in with a can of spray paint. I was doing a convention for like a law firm. It was, and it was more like a team building thing. So they wanted me to come out and give a brief history of graffiti and do a quick live demonstration. And then they broke up into teams, and each team had to illustrate where they're going forward with their job, basically, but they're illustrating with spray paint. So they had a blast. You know, they put on these like paint suits, and of course they had some cocktails to make it a little more entertaining for them, but it was like groups of 7, and they would pick one person who could probably draw the best. And it was pretty cool to see what they came up with, people that, you know, had no spray paint background. And
I'm so interested in the performance art thing, though, because, you know, it's funny, I was thinking about this the other day. You know, I started doing these live interviews. Troy, you know, performs live. We have another friend who is a live event painter. I mean, it's a thing these days, you know, and I don't know if it's some sort of, you know, flippant trend or if it'll actually continue, but I know you and I both have, you know, acting backgrounds, and so we were comfortable getting up on stage. What do you think it is about people wanting to see you actually creating?
I think, especially with graffiti, most people never see it being done because the majority of it's done in the middle of the night or not right smack dab in your face in the public eye. So when I do that now, you know, most people are like, wow, now I see how it starts from a sketch to the fill-in to the graphics and the outline and the highlights. It's like when I did one at Loveless Cafe a couple years ago, I did an art show out there and a live painting, and a lot of older people were coming out of Loveless Cafe to watch me paint. And you know, a lot of times I just get into it and I'm painting and I don't know who's behind me, and I turned around and to see so many elderly people like, wow, you know, that's really cool. That's amazing. I've never seen it actually from start to finish. So they were kind of watching as they're eating their biscuits out the window, like, oh, I see what he's doing now. And then they came out and was like, oh, so what are you doing now? And I like to explain the process to people because they don't know. And just I say, yeah, so now I start with my sketch, and then I fill it in, and then I outline it, and now I'm doing my 3D or my drop shadows, and then I'm creating background, and then they can identify with it a little bit and kind of understand the process from start to finish.
It's funny though, because that's actually becoming kind of your demographic. I mean, I know the last time we talked, you were telling me that you had spoken recently at someone's class, and
Yeah.
you showed up, and
Yeah.
you didn't know who was going to be there, and it turned out to be a bunch of like 70-year-old, stay-at-home moms. But I mean, they
Yeah.
were like into it. I mean,
Yeah.
probably because it was something that they had never experienced before, right?
Yeah,
You
it
moved
was.
outside of your comfort zone.
I spoke at a modern art class to a guy. He works at the Frisk, but he teaches a modern art class to these elderly women twice a month, and he's been doing it for a while. And I recently did some graffiti work for him, and he's 80 years old. He's the coolest guy I've ever met. I'm telling you, in all the years I've painted, this guy found me online, and he said, can you come over and let's talk about you maybe doing a piece for my house? And I said, okay. I get over, and he's like, can you sit right here in this chair? And he had a yellow legal pad, and he started asking me questions, like great questions. And I was like, okay, firing them off one by one. And he's like, if it gets on my crown molding, that's okay, because that's what graffiti is. And if it gets on the door and the carpet down here and the ceiling, that's graffiti, so just do your thing. And his only request was that I don't put anything vulgar on his wall, because he has grandchildren and he teaches a class there. He's like, however, I don't believe in trying to give you pointers or try to tell you what to paint, but at the same time just saying, this is my home, and I do have grandkids that come here, and it wouldn't be appropriate. And I said, well, yeah, I don't really put vulgar things in my painting.
No, wait, you've done like friendly graffiti is what we like to call it at 12th Avenue South. I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of known for being able to like adapt your style to
Yeah.
families and kids.
Yeah, I don't really get into the political things of graffiti and putting all these messages and this and that. I'm more into the graphics and the color schemes and the energy of it, and just wanting people to identify with what I'm trying to get across to you. But yeah, this guy tells me, I don't believe in commissioning artists to paint for me. I buy paint off the wall. So if I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. However, you can't do that for graffiti, because where are you going to find it? So he let me paint on silk grass cloth on his wall. First of all, grass cloth is just expensive anyway, but silk grass cloth. And, of course, I went up to the molding. I covered his closet door, his alarm keypad. Everything was incorporated into this piece. And he absolutely loved it. And I just did something else for him a few weeks ago. And this art class, this modern art class, was elderly women. They had no clue about graffiti, street art, but they were interested. And so when I left, I brought a couple pairs of women's pumps and a blazer and a couple canvases and some kids' things. And they were just like, wow, this is great. If only I could have had these shoes, years ago, they were soaking it up. And then, at the same time, they're like, I'd love for you to do a canvas for my grandson, or, a piece for my house. They liked all the different styles that I had. And yeah, it's cool to see people be able to accept it for what it is, because like I said, if you say graffiti, they just think of interstate bombing at 3 a.m., a tag across a mom and pop business or something that has no creative outlet to it.
So I think one of the best, lines Troy ever dropped in front of me was, if you don't want to be broke, you'll learn business. And I was like, damn, that is so true, right?
Yeah.
And so for you, as someone who has monetized a very sort of niche, industry, what would be your number one piece of advice, how to make money? For other artistic people or entrepreneurial types. I've been paying attention, so I've been back here almost 10 years now,
And in the 10 years, I've watched a lot of the young artists that are progressing really fast because they have everything at their fingertips that we didn't have when I started, but they don't have the business sense. And I remember talking to a couple kids just last year. They said, man, we're out here just bombing and stuff, and you're doing commissions every day. And I was like, yeah, you know, and they're like, well, that's what's up. That's where we want to get to. And I was like, man, first, pay attention to your audience and the people that reply to your post and who are liking your art and what they have to say about it. And, you know, you just have to put it out there. You know, you can't just stick to the one thing. Like, if you're just into bombing, that's really not going to take you anywhere. Doing illegal graffiti in the middle of the night. You know, Banksy, yeah, sure.
Banksy being the very, very
I'm sure you guys
famous
all know who
French street
Banksy is.
artist
Yeah.
who kind of blew the roof off of the graffiti house over the last 10 years.
He did, and he started out doing graffiti letters, but he became more of a political street artist who actually has a lot of things to say, and it's basically more stencil art. So Banksy puts together cuts all these stencils and the wordings and everything, and he goes out, and it's a lot easier to just throw that up really quick, but in very high profile places that you would never have the time to do this immaculate piece. So, and a lot of times they're wheat pasting it, so you print out this thing and you're just rolling and pasting it up real fast, and then you get out of there so you can do the whole side of a building and make a great statement. So Banksy got his fame not from his graffiti letters, but from his political pieces. You know, one of his most iconic ones is the apes with the sign on it saying, "Laugh now, but one day we'll be in charge." You know, and it's taken off, and I don't know if you guys have seen Exit Through the Gift Shop. Is a documentary based on Banksy and another guy, Mr. Brainwash, who kind of took his idea and ran with it. But it's you kind of have to know your niche and be willing to. It's still your passion to paint, but everybody's not going to be into maybe that one thing that you feel so passionate about. So it's like I said, I piggybacked off of different things to kind of fill out my crowd and see what kind of responses I got. Like, women's pumps were great, but I only had a few places where I could do that, you know. There was boutiques in New York that I could sell those things like hotcakes. The kids' clothes were great. Canvas work is great. And now, you know, even going from graffiti to my abstract fine arts, I've just touched on that over the past couple of years, but I'm getting a very good following with that. But I have to be in a whole different mindset to even do that. I can't just walk up to a canvas and pump that out like I can do the graffiti stuff I've been doing so long. So I think any advice I would have to anybody wanting to turn their craft into a profession or career is to, one, be able to put it out there. Marketing.
Which is one thing I wanted to touch on really fast, because I don't know if anyone in the audience knows this, but not only do I choose my subjects through word of mouth, but I also, basically everyone that I've talked to so far in, my book, my forthcoming book, as well as my online interview series, always says that word of mouth played the most important role in building their business. It wasn't social media stats, and it wasn't how many retweets they got. I mean, it was one person telling another that they were fantastic, worth their money. So how much has word of mouth played into your graffiti business?
A lot. Word of mouth is very good, and by all means, social media, use it. It's free, it's great, it does wonders. But, when I started my clothing line, I had nothing but telling friends and friends of friends, and they were spreading the word. It all started like trucker hats. I did these trucker hats with a dance company on the front of it for my cousin, and they sold out, and she's like, make me some more. It's like, okay. And I was on the Drew Carey show at the time, and I would wear it to set. And some of the other people were like, dude, that hat is cool, where'd you get it? I said, I made it. And so then I started making some for people on set. And
if anyone doesn't know, Troy was actually the Apple. Well, tell them. The
iPod.
guy with the dreads, the famous.
The iPod silhouettes, like the dancing silhouettes.
That's Troy.
I did one a few years back. I was the dreadlock dancing silhouette. You don't really see them anymore. They were on gift cards, and we didn't get them here in Nashville, but they were in the bigger cities: New York, LA, Philly, San Fran, Miami. I would get calls sometimes and be like, dude, I'm in Italy right now, and your face is plastered on the side of this building. Or, I'm in a train station. So it was great, you know. That was my LA life, was doing a lot of print ads and commercials and guest starring roles on TV shows. And in between that, I would work on my clothes and my craft. And, you know, she was asking, like, the best advice. You will learn from going out there and just trying to get it to the people. They'll let you know, like, if they really like it, oh, I think this is great, you know, right there. And you'll learn about the pricing as well. You tell them what your price is. If your product is not moving, then one or two things. People are not really interested in it, or the price is too high. So you play with all these common factors that make a difference. And you know, that's really how I learned what places that fit the best for my product, and my price margins and profit and loss and all this stuff. It all makes sense. You know, we all make mistakes, but the mistakes teach you the most, you know. And so when I first came here, I was hesitant to even wanting to put my things in some of these stores, because last thing I wanted was that, hey, I'm gonna put some of my product in this store, but it's never gonna sell. And people come back over and over and they just see it in the same spot. You know, it's not a good thing, and I didn't want that. So I was very picky about where I wanted to put my product.
I love that. Okay, well, I'm out of questions. Does anyone in the audience have any extra questions for Troy? Something that maybe I didn't hit on? Stephen?
Well, it's like you just ran through everything, clothing, action.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's graffiti artists. For most people, do you find that to be, how do you say, I mean, you go and recognize yourself as more of an artist, graffiti artist.
Yeah.
A lot of people get lost. There's a fine line.
Right.
Graffiti artists, or did you find doing this self to self?
Yeah, Stephen, you know, I went out to Los Angeles already an artist. The acting thing, I just kind of fell into being in California, you know, and it turned out to be a good fit for me. You know, I wasn't this diehard actor that went to classes all the time and just really got into that world. It was more about commercials and print ads and things. And, you know, I think that I always kept myself an artist. I was always drawing and always painting, and even, you know, when I was surfing and doing the surfboards and things like that, that always kept me grounded. And the television and film side was just something else to try. I was always that kid that just didn't stick to one sport either. I played basketball, I played hockey, I played soccer, I played football, you know, the rifle team at school, just trying all kinds of things because I was bored if I was doing the same thing for too long. So I think artist is definitely who I am. You know, me and Lily laugh about the fact that I sell real estate now as well.
Which is something we didn't touch on, but it's pretty interesting, because I remember when Troy told me he was getting his real estate license, I was like, what?
Yeah, she was almost mad at me, like, don't you dare.
Excuse me? But then he ended up, I was very wrong, because he ended up actually getting a bunch of big graffiti jobs afterwards, which I don't know if it was like taking the pressure off of it or whatever it was, but I mean, I think having multiple streams of income actually helped the business that you love the most.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You know, I don't really tell too many people that I'm in real estate, because most people know me for my art. And when I say it, they're like, what? You're a graffiti artist and you sell real estate? I'm like, yeah. But it works because people are, I guess, tired of the typical realtor. So to me, they just see me as like seeing you, Stephen. You're just another guy, and I just so happen to sell real estate. So I actually market myself as Troy the artist, And if I know you're looking for a house, Stephen, I can help you out. Here you go. You know, so it works great. My wife is an interior designer, and you know, a few of my friends kept telling me, dude, you'd be great in real estate, and I didn't quite understand it. Like, what does that mean? Like, you think I'm a good BSer? Like, why are they saying that? They're like, no, man, it's all about being able to talk to people and selling yourself, and you know, they think that I do that well. So I hesitated with it. I talked about it. I don't know. And so finally I was just like, I'm going to go get my license and give it a shot. And so far I've only worked with friends and friends of friends and some family members, and it's been great. But you probably will never see me on the side of some bus station bench like the real estate king and like my picture.
Tagging over.
Yeah, I've thought about, you know, some interesting ways to kind of market myself as a realtor. I haven't done that yet, but I'll tell another quick story. I was painting the wall at Barista Parlor last year with some friends, and I get into my pieces I had on my headphones, and I'm painting away, and a lady came over from the other side. She's like, oh, I can smell the paint. I just want to see what was going on. And she started talking to a buddy of mine, and I took off my headphones for a minute, and she was talking about real estate stuff, and I was like, oh, that sounds like what I'm dealing with right now. And she was like, what? And I said, I'm dealing with a client like that right now. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, I'm a real estate agent. And she starts laughing. She thought I was kidding. I said, no, I really am. She's like, you're doing graffiti and you're a real estate agent? I said, yeah. She's like, I'm a producer from this show called Love It or List It. And she's like, have you heard of it? I said, no, actually I haven't. And you know, my buddy's like, oh, we watch that all the time. And so she was here in town visiting from Canada, and they were looking for some interesting new agents to kind of do some shows with. And she's like, this would be the best. You know, he's a graffiti artist and he's a real estate agent. So we exchanged cards and we talked, and I kind of felt like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And I kind of blew it off. And she's reached out to me again to ask me if I'm still interested in doing a show, which I still may do it. But, you know, at the time, I was like, I don't know if I want to put myself out there as realtor, but in the whole reality world as well. I'm just enjoying being able to be a full-time graffiti artist. I mean, most of my daily commissions right now are based on graffiti art and things that I really want to do, opposed to a couple of my other friends are kind of stuck in the sign work world. You know, it's like we're all graffiti artists, but we don't get to do what we love every day. And I've gotten to a point to where most of the jobs that are coming to me are things that I'm very interested in, like interior wall on grass cloth, or, you know, it may be a bedroom wall, it may be a restaurant sign, but done in graffiti, or interiors, exteriors, fence jobs, just whatever. So it's a good time, and I'm definitely enjoying it. I feel pretty blessed to get up every day and say, okay, well, heading over to the Nations today to paint on this new restaurant that's going to be here in a couple days, you know.
I think we have time for just one last question. Does anyone have anything you wanted to ask Troy? Yes.
I was not, man. I mean, I used to doodle a lot and just play around. I was always a bad student, man. But I found that I was very good at I used to just grab pictures and try to draw it. Exactly, I like photorealistic things. And I got pretty good at it, so when he introduced me to that, I had never really picked up a can of spray paint. I just identified with it, and I loved it, and knew that I wanted to do it. And man, I haven't stopped since I started. You know, I went through phases where, you know what, I'm gonna put this down a little bit and go to the airbrush over here. Same thing, man. I wasn't really introduced to an airbrush until I was probably 22. I'd seen it done, like Opryland, you know, and malls and whatnot, but I had never touched one, and we didn't have airbrushes in our art classes when I was a kid. So when I first picked up an airbrush, I was like, wow, this is super cool. It was kind of like spray painting, but this little tiny little thing. So man, I would just sit in the house and airbrush. I've been doing that now for probably 25 years, and it felt the same to me without having to look over my shoulder and worry about getting jumped because I wasn't from the neighborhood, you know. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for everyone for coming out today. This was the 9th edition of SIFIT. It was a real pleasure to have one of my favorite people sitting up here with me. So next month I will be interviewing Larry Close. He's the founder of Cause a Scene, which is a local booking agency. They put on live house shows all the time. So see you guys next month. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Lauren, this is Troy.
Lauren, pleasure to meet you.
How do I turn this on?
No, you're still on. Okay. Oops.
He was the greatest looking person I've ever
Nice to meet you. How are you?
I'm Carol.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Great to meet you.
Fascinating to listen to your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's try my best, you know. Life can be very short. You get reminded at times. I'm enjoying just doing what I'm doing right now. I feel that I'm in a good spot. It's good to be back home, close to family, and watch Nashville becoming what it is right now. And,
Gosh, yeah, all the changes.
yeah, and starting to accept my art form. You know, 2 years ago, Nashville was not so accepting of this. So I feel, it has. And the big mural projects that happened this year with all the international artists, I think that's helped a lot. I think going forward, Nashville's going to be a different place.
It's interesting because when you're talking international, I think